Hello everyone, and we are live. Well, for this week's author chat, I'm doing more of a Q&A kind of format this time, and that's also because, unfortunately, my co-host of the week was unable to attend, so we're switching it up a little bit. Anyway, so what I will do is get kind of right into it. I have kind of a set of preset questions. If anybody wants to chime in on their own, asking about anything under the sun, feel free during the live, and we'll go from there. Now, for those who may not know me, my name is Katharine Wibell. I am an author and artist. So here we go. Anywho, kind of to begin, I typically focus on, I guess, more of my writing on TikTok at the moment. And so I'm going to take a little bit of time and talk about art first, and then we'll switch back into the writing side of things. So, as an artist, I am something called a reverse glass painter. So what happens is I actually paint on the back side of glass. Glass kind of serves as my canvas. And I'll start with kind of creating a basic outline structure. So think of a coloring book. I come up with the outlines and then fill it in with all the fun color. I paint on layers and layers. Whatever image I use, I have to paint in a mirror image effect. I know that's really weird for people to think about, but I do a lot of pet portraiture. And so, for instance, if I'm taking someone's dog, I actually usually work from photographs. So I'll revert the photograph to being kind of a mirror image, so I know what I'm basing off of, and using that to kind of create my painting. And as I said, painting directly on the glass, different layers until I work painting on the final layer. Sometimes it could be 4 layers, sometimes it can be 14. It just depends on the piece. But with that said, once all the paint dries, I get to flip the painting around and reveal the final product. So reverse glass painting is a little different. It's a lot of fun. I work with acrylics. If you know the different types of paint, that's the kind I like. It's quick drying, especially works well when I am trying to do lots of layers. But I thoroughly enjoy that type of painting, and so that's one half of my life. Now, going back to the writing and the author aspect, since that's what most people are curious about here on the book talk side of things, since I'm an active member of that community. And so here we go. So I have a couple preset questions to go through, and like I said, if anytime someone wants to ask something, feel free. So, what is your genre and what drew you to it? I write high fantasy, and I have several different series that range from young adult, new adult, and adult kind of fiction, but all of them kind of are under that umbrella of high fantasy. So I deal with fantastical worlds. A lot of my series have multiple worlds in them. I even have one that has a multiverse. So it's kind of getting fun to kind of explore all different kind of realms and settings throughout my series. Now, when it comes to writing about epic fantasy, I guess what drew me to it, that's kind of, I don't know. I guess ever since I can remember, I have been very passionate and in love with mythology and all the kind of fantastical creatures, especially, foremost, the dragon. But with that said, I've over the years amassed quite a large collection of different encyclopedias of mythology and anthologies of mythology, because again, that's something I just love. So writing high fantasy just made sense. It was something that I was familiar with. It was something I really enjoy reading, and so writing. That's kind of why I ended up in that genre at the moment. And I don't necessarily see myself expanding beyond that anytime soon, but you never know. Okay, what inspired me to become a writer? Well, that one kind of goes way back. In my childhood, my sister and we lived in a rural area in Georgia, in the United States, and so there were a lot of times when it was just she and I playing out in the fields, in the forest, in the backyards, etc., so on. So we kind of started developing a kind of pretty dynamic multiverse with all sorts of different creatures, entities. They started developing different kind of backstories and interwoven relationships and all sorts of different worlds, etc., so on. And so that vibrant mythos that we were developing, I loved. I loved for years and years and years, and was very reluctant to say that maybe I was too old for that. Never too old. Anywho, I knew that after a certain time, I wanted to share that whole world, that multiverse that we created, with other people in the form of books. I didn't know how, especially at like the age of like 13, had no clue how I was going to approach writing, how I was going to approach publishing. No idea. I just knew it was going to happen. I was so adamant that was going to happen. Anywho, skipping a few years later, I dabbled with writing here and there, but it never was something that I sat down and just started. But I guess it was right before the summer I graduated from high school, and right before entering college, I had this fantastical dream, and it incorporated me transforming into this white tiger and jumping into this pond to flee, running around and fleeing from some kind of commanding general of some military training camp that I was in. And because of that, I started developing this news story, and I kept going back to that dream and figuring out what was happening, who was transforming into this tiger, why were they running through a military camp, what was happening, and slowly characters started revealing themselves to me, and this whole storyline kind of emerged. And so, taking a little bit of my summer, I kind of dabbled with the first few chapters, and I guess for the most part had to put it away on the back burner while I went through college. But upon graduating, picked up that story again and got back into it, and ended up going and writing my first book, which I'm going to tilt slightly, is the blue one right in the corner, Asaras Claws. So that ended up being my debut book. Now, originally, I thought Asaras Claws was going to be my tester book. I was going to learn about writing and learn about how to query people and, you know, the whole publishing side of things, and this was just going to be my attempt at getting from the point of conception to the reality of having a book. And after a little bit of time, I was kind of going through the process of editing the book and going through it, thinking, oh, you know, once I'm done and published, I'll start writing my series that I was, you know, so adamant about in my childhood. But, with that said, went to a writer's conference, which, if anybody is a writer out there, author out there, and has not attended a writer's conference, I would totally advise trying one out, because some of the stuff you, through experience, have figured out, know, etc., so on, but just going through some of those classes, courseworks, talking with other people, it can be a great help and inspire you in ways you didn't think. One of the classes that I was taking at that point of time, in that conference, I was given a challenge or everybody in the class was given a challenge saying, take a character, an obscure side character in the story you're working on, and come up with, their life. Tell me, their backstory, flesh them out. So pick essentially a 2D character, some no name, and, just delve into this person's life and their backstory and, their quirks and who they are, etc., so on. So, being kind of a cheeky person as I can be, I was working on Asaras Claws, and I decided, well, you can't really go more obscure than my main character's father, who is deceased before the book even begins. So just dabbling around and fleshing out like a backstory for this character that I was never really going to write about, all of a sudden I realized that Asaras Claws was not going to be a standalone book. It ended up being a 4-book series. So I came into the conference with one. I was pretty much sure that I was just going to go start querying after this. and just, you know, move on with that project. I came out with it with 4 books, essentially. So that's how the Incarn Saga came about, and the next one was Uyghur's Fangs, going through Crocodus Hackles to Gaia Hem's Talons. So it ended up being a tester series. Now, of course, being a tester series, I went through the whole querying process, was not very good at it at the time, so neither here nor there, but I just felt so passionate about that book. I knew it was going to have to publish, and at that time I just started meeting and befriending another author who was self-published at the time and going through Amazon to distribute. And at the time I was just like, you can do that? You can self-publish? That's a thing? Anywho, with some of her advice and help along the way, I struck out on my own and became an indie author myself. And then, I guess, as life goes on, after that series was completed, which is such a satisfying and sad thing when you complete a series and have to say goodbye to your characters, I was able to then branch off and start working on my other 2 projects, which I publish right now simultaneously. Do not advise that for anybody, but that's what I'm doing. So the insanity ensues. I think I drew that question a little long, so I do apologize. But my inspiration being a writer kind of came from the concept of I was going to write the series, hell or high water, it was going to happen, and the roundabout way that ended up going through another route, going through another series, before finally returning to the Jed Chronicles, which I'm producing now, and finally able to share all that vibrant multiverse that I developed with my sister in childhood now is able to be enjoyed by a lot of other people. So that's always a satisfying feeling for a writer. Okay, question number 3. What character of yours is your favorite and why? Okay, so being an author of multiple book series right now, and all my series they have a large bodies of characters. And I don't know why I choose this as my route to write, but I like writing a lot of dynamic characters throughout multiple series, so there's a lot to choose from. And trying to pick a favorite is hard because, you know, whatever book you're working on, you know, all those characters are right there with you. You're kind of going through, you know, their joys and their sorrows and their struggles right there, so that's very fresh in my mind. So I could say it's, you know, any of the characters in the novella series, which is The Guardian Speaker. That's the one I'm actively writing the next novella for. But honestly, there are characters in all of my books that I can love and say I love. For instance, The 12 Tasks being inspired by my childhood. The main character is named Katie. I'm Katharine. So yes, I kept my name for the main character because she was my alter ego for years and years and years. So with that said, I have a very strong affinity for Katie of Earth because she is the me I wish I could have lived those lives and enjoyed exploring the wonders of this fantastical magic universe that she's doing right now in the books. But with that said, it was fun kind of going back and writing and trying to remember how I felt and how I viewed the world at different ages, because the book series, The Jed Chronicles, Katie of Earth, starts at 13, but will end in her early 20s. So it's a wide span. I categorize it as young adult because you will see her maturing throughout the series, and, you know, first loves, heartbreak, etc., so on. So there is a lot of that young adultness in it, even though all my books I wouldn't categorize as romantic or romance fantasy. There's always romance in them, but that's not the central feature of my stories at the moment. Anywho, getting back to the point, so Katie of Earth might be one of my favorites, though writing The Guardian Speaker, my adult dark Viking novella series, I was working today on a couple characters that every time I write them, they just put a smile on my face. One of them is the comedian of the book, so I can't help but chuckle whenever he makes one of those kind of statements or jokes or that dry humor sometimes he puts out there, it just makes me smile. So I do love the character Skeggy as one of my other choices I'll throw out there at the moment. Okay, let's see. Question number 4. Which character of yours is the most challenging to write and why? Okay, so if anybody has written multiple characters, dabbled in writing, or are authors to date, writing characters, depending on the character, can be very challenging or it can be very simple, depending on, again, lots of factors. The story, the character, where you are in the story, etc., so on. So if I could say that there was a character challenging to write, I would have to think. So in my young adult series, The Jet Chronicles, I have a villain that I want to express him in a certain way. And he's one that I keep questioning if I'm achieving the goal that I set for myself. Like, I want him to be perceived in a certain way. I want him to be, you know, that kind of almost chilling in the sense of terrifying in his way of he thinks and interacts with the world, yet the layers that peel back, you know, you can see that he's not just a black and white villain of some cartoons of childhood. You know, he has dimension, but that one is hard for me because I keep questioning myself, and I don't know if any other writers out there have ever questioned themselves when you're trying to express or write about a character you're developing. Thank you for the rose. But for me, that one I do doubt myself, so I feel confident for many things, but that one villain, I just don't know if it's right yet. And I do ask my beta readers, and I do inquire with my editor, I'm like, so what do you think? How do you feel? How does he make you feel? What about the scene? Is it right? Is it too much? But self-doubt is a thing in writing, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because it can challenge you to be better. Complacency, I think, is the worst thing for anybody in any kind of occupation you're in, be it, for me, writing and art, you know, but you want to be able to always challenge yourself. And so self-doubt is not the worst thing as long as you're not crippled by it. But again, I'm very long-winded with these answers, so I apologize. Okay, question number 5. Do you prefer writing dialogue, action, or a different kind of scene? Okay, so I'm an action writer. I'm that person who will be sucked into an action movie that, I will admit, I don't have to watch a movie or series that has a lot of background meat in it. As long as there's like just that fantastical fight scenes or just over-the-top stuff, that kind of like draws my attention sometimes. Maybe a little too much. That might be one of those things I shouldn't admit, but it does. I'm going to pause for 1 second. I love writing my villains, and you can have so much fun with them. Mine all have a soft side. Aw, I like that. Yes, I do think villains should have a gamut of emotions, because obviously if they're all that's stark, that maybe I'm going to interject on myself. Maybe if you're writing like depending on your age bracket, if you're writing for children's book, you can have that kind of the villain is a villain because it wants to do evil, etc., so on. But having villains for older readers, having multiple layers, different dimensions, different backstories that have dynamic reasons of why they do what they do, that's always fantastic. So yes, villains are fun to write. I just have that one that I just don't know about. But in general, I do like writing villains. I have... Again, maybe it's one of those things, maybe I shouldn't admit that, but I do love a good villain, be it someone like Hannibal, and it just gives you those shivers and down the spine. I like a good villain. Or I like a villain that is done well. Good villain might be a little bit of a weird description. My vocabulary, your vocabulary is awesome. I'm kind of older now for TikTok, but I do have one question. Do you play video games online and write? Okay, so I'll admit, I do not play video games at the moment. I used to dabble that years ago, but I will admit they're so distracting, and if I have video games at the house, I will never focus on work because I work at the house all the time. I would probably be doing that, and I was a Super Mario Smash Brawl person. I loved it. I was all about it. I love me some Ike. Funny thing, because I have a character named Ike and no relation, but no, I do not play video games online at the moment, but yes, I do, and I've never tried to do the writing online. I know a lot of people, or I've been talking to people who use Discord or some other platforms for writing sprints, but no, I have not done something like that for writing in among itself. I think for me, I kind of liked the idea of being in my office, and honestly I can't work with other noise. I have to be very focused when creating a new series or just new work in general. I really need to focus in, but I don't mind then talking about writing or hanging out with other people when I'm doing stuff like editing or all the other plethora of fun things like marketing and PR that indie authors have to do as well. Hopefully that answers your question. Let me know if it doesn't. Let me see. Working on a book since 2016. In the final chapters now. Any advice on how to find a good publisher? Okay. Now, I will admit I am indie. So I go through, and actually I'm exclusive through Amazon at the moment. I may be branching out for my print versions and trying to distribute then and go what they call a little bit wide, which means my books will then be in things like Kobo, Barnes & Noble, etc., so on. But for publishers, I mean, the proper process is you would need to query a literary agent, and that is a whole process in and among itself. And if you are curious about doing that and then trying to get into a big publishing house, I would say make sure you do a lot of research. There are lots of great resources. I think one of them is Writer's Digest, if I remember correctly, and if you get the book, it is big. They publish it every year, and they keep up-to-date information on a bunch of literary agents, who's still querying, what kind of stuff they're looking into, because you want to make sure you're reaching out to the right person who, depending on your genre, you want to hit that niche. Also be aware of trends right now, because some of the bigger trends right now, I mean, romance is very popular, but subcategories is the LGBTQ. You want to be a very dynamic, wide cast. That's very appealing right now for agents and publishers. So, do your research and find out that way. I'm indie, so I self-publish. I use Amazon. I could talk a lot about how that works for me, but yeah, if you're getting through the stages, start now. Start doing some research, so when you are ready, make sure you have your manuscript edited by a professional editor, and then yeah, do your research. Have a list of literary agents who are querying. You can also find resources for people who will help you with your query letter and compiling that whole packet of information, because again, different skills that you need when you are an author, but there are plenty out there who are looking for new people to represent, and I would say good luck with that, because I would love that in the future. Again, that is not my skill set, clearly, and you never know. You may be the one who gets through and gets to a great publishing house, and I hope you do if that is the route you want to take. But indie authors, I will just say, there are a lot of us out there, and there are many, many people who are making a great living off their writing too, being indie. So decide which way you want to go, and you don't have to just be one or the other exclusively. You can be a hybrid and do a little bit of both if that's what you want. Okay, so let's see how this chat's going. Okay. Let's see. It's great to know, honestly. I feel like I need to catch up a lot more. Your answer is perfect for me. Okay. Indie forever. Yes! I do love indie. I didn't realize I was going to like it as much as I did, but it's a lot of work. Indie authors, It's, there's a lot more workload on your shoulders. You do get bigger cuts. You are in more control, which, as a control freak myself, that's great. But it is a lot. It's a big workload. You do have to understand, you have to self-promote, be it things like this platform, other platforms, newsletters are great things, interviewing other people, being interviewed yourself, just getting your name out there, and of course advertising. And that's a whole big topic about how to run ads. And I do not want to bore you right now about that. Okay, so where was I? I think it was, do I prefer writing dialogue, action, or other scenes? I think that was on that one. Okay, so I'm an action person. As I said, I love action. I love writing about action scenes. They come easy to me. I can quickly fill a page. And I am a person, when I write, there are so many ways you can approach writing. Some people set, goals. Some people just go with the flow. One of the most common goals is a word count you're trying to reach each day. I'm less concerned about words. I like page numbers because I, in the background of my mind, kind of have an idea of what size book I'm aiming for by the number of pages. So my goal at the moment, which I will admit this past month has been really hard for me, have not met my goal, but is 4 pages a day. I work best in the morning. I typically, up until the past few weeks, have been able to get most of those pages done in the morning, if not all, and then that leaves the afternoon for, if I'm doing a painting, I can start working on that. If I'm doing the marketing aspect, these live videos usually in the afternoon Eastern time for me, because that just works better for me, is new material in the morning, editing anything else I need to do in the afternoon. But yeah, I do love action scenes. They're easy for me to fill and hit that page number. Dialogue's fun too, but I think I'm getting better at it. It was one thing that I think I was weak on, especially in my earlier books, especially book 1. And for those young writers out there, or new writers out there, you have to understand, one thing to always keep in mind is whatever your first book is going to be your first book. You will love it to death. It is an amazing accomplishment. It means so much. You can earn awards or recognition through it, but it's still your first book. The goal of your life should be to continuously improve yourself and your writing as you go on. I love Asaras Claws, which I'll switch over just 1 second. There you go. It's the blue one right there. Love it, love it, love it. First book. Got a lot of recognition coming out in the indie bracket. But with that said, it is a first book. And so when I go back and read it, I do sometimes kind of cringe because my writing has improved so much more since that point in time. And, which is a good thing. But it's one of those things when I talk about my books, I'm like, oh, my first series, it's great. I love it. I hear a lot of people who do enjoy it, but I think my newer work is better. And that's, again, as a writer, you kind of always want to be improving yourself. Okay, so, let's talk about these roundabout answers. Okay, how do you come up with my cover design? Okay, so I currently work with 2 different cover designers. And they are from 2 different platforms. I got them different ways. People or authors can find and reach out to different designers numerous ways. You can go directly, you can do research and find someone you enjoy. If you're looking at some of these books published by big publishing houses and even down to indies, you should have some kind of note in usually it's the copyright page of who the cover designer is, so you can do some little research yourself and then try to reach out to them. Just know if someone is working for a big publishing house, they may be exclusively working for them, or they're going to charge a lot. So be warned about that. Now for me, I have 2 different designers, and I have my first one, which was for the Incarn Saga, as well as, I'm sorry, the light you can't really see well, the Guardian Speaker back here. She does both of those, so very different styles, but I wanted them to look very different. I didn't want all my covers from different series to look like it was one continuous thing. I tried to change them up, for each series, so people can just glance and tell, okay, different series, and that each book or novella in that series kind of is related to the ones they're supposed to be related to. So that cover designer I got through a platform called Fiverr, and Fiverr is one of those that, honestly, anybody can enter to be a creator. So be warned about that. Now, with that said, you have to do your research. You have to understand there are a lot of people on Fiverr. Some charge a lot. Some are very, very affordable. The designer I use is pretty affordable. But I did have to do a lot of research, and I did have to budget some money to test out different cover designers to find the one I want. Now, I like it. It worked for me. But just be warned, because you don't know until you try to work with someone on that platform. Not everybody is going to be up to the caliber you want. So just take that in mind. Now, the other cover designer I used, or is using for my Jed Chronicles series, found her a totally different way. I did want to branch away and try to find someone with a new perspective when I was getting to that series. It just felt right to me. And so I actually went on to Facebook, and there are a number of groups that are meant for cover designers to post images of their work and authors to find cover designers. So they're kind of that perfect mix. And so using one of those places, I kind of found her, which was a fluke. Loved her work, loved her examples, started talking with her. She is far more expensive than my Fiverr girl, but does incredible work. She actually, if you know the book Six of Crows, she did not design the US cover, but she designed one of the other covers for a different country version of Six of Crows. So she has some nice work out there, and worth every penny, I think, in my mind. But there was lots of different ways for you to get your cover designers. Just understand you may need to lose a few bucks before you find the one you want, depending on the platform or how you're approaching it. Do your research, be very smart about it. Know exactly what you want out of them. And if you need to talk with fellow authors and ask, I would say always ask, what should I ask when I'm talking to a potential designer? What do I need to think about that I may not know or expect to think about when you're trying to approach that conversation? And hopefully you find that perfect designer for you. Okay, so comments up. Every time I see a bad cover, I cringe. You spend all that effort and then put a poor cover on it. That's true. There are lots of, like I said, lots of different caliber designers, and there are some authors who design their own, and they could be very great at it, especially if you have a background in design, or you're very comfortable with something like PowerPoint. I am not. I am an artist, and I will fully admit my type of painting is not what I want for my book covers. And I will admit it because I made that error early on. My original cover for Asaras Claws, I painted. And I did a bunch of no-nos because, again, I was learning. And it was a true learning book. I will be the first to say that I have made probably every wrong step along the way in my author journey, and that's okay. At least I learned, and I can help people going forward and say, don't do what I did. Please don't do that. That is, you will save yourself some pain. Anywho, I did kind of work with a friend who was familiar with PowerPoint, and we designed a cover based off a painting I did for it. And I will admit, I didn't realize some of these undersaid things, that covers with blood on them were not as well received as covers without. And again, I wanted to express that I'm writing a dark fantasy, shifter fantasy, and wanted to incorporate the kind of Nordic Viking-like aspects that I was interweaving, along with, of course, my shapeshifters and everything else. And I thought it was really cool. I was very proud about it. And then made no sales. I also didn't know how to advertise and market, so that also may have played some aspect in it. But with that said, yes, I started doing research, trying to figure out what was I doing wrong, and learning a lot at that time. And eventually I had to admit to myself that I needed to find someone else to do a cover different. And I started doing a lot of research on my genre and trying to find what other covers look like in the niche that I was hoping to market into. And through that came up with the designs that you see there. Found my cover designer, tried to express that, and I think she did very well of coming out with the cover designs for the book series, meshing a little bit more with what was popular when it started coming out. Another thing to think about cover design is if you are indie, even if you're not, but if you're indie, obviously, you're kind of in control of the covers process. Realize that there are trends, even with covers, not just genres, but cover design trends that come and go. So something may work for you for a number of years and then all of a sudden stop. And it's because the trend of what is eye-catching, trend is what's popular, trend of what people want to see in a cover changed. And as an indie author, a great thing is you are in control, and whenever that happens, you can re-release your books with a new cover edition. And I would say edition number 2, and slap on a new cover, and blah, 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 and there you go. But if you kind of watch some of the biggest books out there, you'll see books, even things like Harry Potter, their covers have changed over the years. And it's because they're trying to keep up with the trends. We may be biased, especially I, of having the original cover, because that is what I grew up with. But trends happen, and so even in the biggest publishing houses, they try to keep up with them as they go along. So be aware of that. Keep kind of an eye on what is trendy for you, your subgenre, and market to that. When that changes, it may mean you just have to decide if you want to change along with it, or keep true to the original, or come out with, edition number 2 with a new cover release. Things to think about. Okay, editing and cover design is worth every penny as long as you research. That is true. And I cannot express that more, because kind of the rule of thumb is if you have an eye-catching cover, it allows a potential reader to pause long enough to then read your blurb, and be it the physical blurb on your back of your book, or if you're going through an online platform like Amazon, start reading that blurb on the page. The blurb then gets someone interested in buying your book or downloading it, and then it goes into that first sentence, gets you to the second sentence, gets you to the first paragraph, to the first page, and then hopefully into the book. So it is a full line of trying to toy people into getting into, buying into your book series, and it does start with the cover. Same thing with editing, I think. There are a number of authors out there who don't edit much, or don't hire a professional editor, they trust themselves, or they don't really care, and to each their own. I'm not going to demean anybody else's choices. I just can only express that I personally feel that it is appreciated by the majority of readers when you have a well-edited book. Because when someone comes through and just stumbles upon some basic grammatical error, spelling error, it can be jarring. If, depending on the type of editing, some editors can help catch plot holes that you've missed, and, a good interested reader will start, finding those plot holes and, start questioning things. And you want to have your book well edited, well formatted, and produced so, even if you're indie, you're as competitive as any other book on the shelf, doesn't matter who put it out there. So, yes, editors, I think, are essential. And again, kind of like with book cover people, there are different ways you can find them, but I do advise whomever is out there trying to write to make sure you do hire at least one professional editor. I won't, unless people really want me to, get into the concept of there are different type of editors for different things out there, but make sure your book is professionally edited, especially if you are trying to query an agent and get into a publishing house, because they all say your book has to be professionally edited before they even will look at it. So make sure it is edited. Make sure you budget for the editing, because that does cost money, and go from there. Okay, let's see. I'm very long-winded. I'm so sorry. Okay, so what is the hardest challenge for being a writer? Okay. Hardest challenge for being a writer. Oh, that can vary so much. Okay. For me, it is the unknown. What I mean by that is starting the journey where I didn't know a lot of things, but I didn't know a lot of things. So the hardest thing for me was trying to figure out just what questions to even ask, because when you don't know, you don't know. You don't know. That makes sense. Do you follow that? Okay. So, yeah, the biggest thing I would say is, yes, make sure you start paying attention to other authors out there if you are in your writing journey and trying to get to the point of becoming an author yourself. That can help you, finding people on platforms like this, asking questions. I would advise, always ask, different authors that are out there, hey, what is something that you wish you knew at the beginning of your journey that would have helped you so much if you had known it? I don't know how you want to word it, but, that kind of idea would help you, because I've seen authors, I've been around, I've had my first book published in 2016. I was writing, it took me a long time to write, so I was writing for a while before then. But I've seen authors come out and publish their first book and do amazingly well, and a lot of that is due to the fact that they researched. They started listening in. They started finding the questions to ask. They started looking into the answers. And so by the time they released their first book, they were light years better off than I was when I started out. Again, I was that person that fell on my face every step of the way. It is an uphill journey, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I still feel like I'm going up that uphill journey, but I am a person that now I try to take all the courses. I try to take all the classes, listen to the seminars, try to chime in and listen to fellow authors on all different platforms, just because there may be something I don't know yet that would benefit, or I could benefit from. And so it's the unknown that is the hardest challenge, I think, for a writer, but that's my personal opinion. Okay. Let's see. How much is it for basic editing team, development line, and proofreading? Okay, so the benefit and the curse of editing and editors is that it varies. It can vary wildly. So when you are looking for an editor, and again, as this question was saying, development line, proofread, those are all different type of editors. Some people hire different editors, so they'll have multiple, and sometimes you are able to find one that encompasses them all. Or depending on where you are in your writing journey, maybe you published a couple times, you may decide that you don't need every different editor for everything, that you might just need to find a niche one that's purely for line or purely for proofreading. Anyhow, they do vary wildly. Some editors, actually a lot of editors, charge per word, and that terrifies me because I write some big books when it comes to my full length. I write very, very large books. So per word is kind of pricey, but some do it by how the editor I have charges by how long it takes her to work. So the more I have it cleaned up before she gets to it, in the sense that I work with beta readers, we try to have my manuscript pretty edited even before it goes to the editor, because she is by time. So if it takes her less time to get through it, I pay less. That's great for me. But a lot of them charge per word, so be aware for that. And it's usually like a fraction of a penny, but depending on the length of your book, that can add up. Excuse me. I write stuff that... I write books that are around 170,000 words. So, wordy. That's why I talk a lot, wordy. So doing these novellas was a breath of fresh air because they are quick. And so the last time I got charged by an editor for one of these novellas, it wasn't a lot at all because they're so much smaller. So it's hard for me to let you know how much they're worth. People can pay anything from, depending on the editor and their quality in the background. I've heard some people say they've chucked out a few $100s. Some people pay thousands. So do your research, have a budget in mind, see what you can find in your budget, and make sure you do, check their background, because anybody can say, oh, I'm good at writing, I'm going to cater myself as an editor. I like to make sure someone has worked in the industry, be it like a publishing or maybe even editing, for newspapers, just some kind of work in the industry. That's my personal preference. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but as the statement of the day is do your research. And, but yeah, be prepared to spend, 500, 600 on editing. Some do more, some do less, but kind of keep that in mind. You're doing great. Love this. Put me on your interviewer list. Okay. Oh yeah, that's great. So, what I am doing is weekly authors chats, and as kind of kicked off this one saying, unfortunately, the one who was supposed to co-host with me today wasn't able to attend, so this is why I'm doing my solo today. But if any author writer wants to join, message me. Friend me, message me so I can remember, and I am creating, a schedule for these little live chats with other authors on TikTok. I also have an opportunity if you like the more blog and written style interviews, and I'm sharing those on my blog, Goodreads, all across my social media, and so it's just another way that people can get exposure across the board. So again, live chats, written interview, if you are interested. Again, follow me and message me if you can, because then I can remember, because I probably won't. I live by my planner and I will forget. How much should you save up budget for editors? Okay. So kind of what I was saying, I think I kind of covered this a little bit. It's really hard to tell. I would say between 500 to 800 but again, you might find someone that is amazing who costs more. You might find someone that's amazing who costs far less. So editing is one of the most expensive. I think editing and cover design for indies are the most expensive thing. And some people have a very expensive editor but very cheap, and not to say cheap as a bad thing, but very affordable cover designer, or vice versa. You could be spending a lot of money on your cover design and less on your editor, but those are the two biggest things. And, there are a lot of expenses coming into a first-time writer, which you have to understand. You have your ISBNs, your copyrights. If you're starting websites, those kind of things. There are a lot of stuff that do cost money to get you up and running, but I would, it's so hard to say, 1,500 between the two and start from there. If you can throw more that way, that would be great. If you don't use it all, that's fantastic. But I really don't know what to tell you. It is so hard because when I was looking just to see, because I've been publishing 2 works simultaneously, but it's hard because I've been focusing on a singular editor, and I kind of want to split them so I have both projects kind of moving at a quicker pace. But it means I'll need a new editor, and so I have also started kind of looking around, and it does kind of when you can see some of their prices. But check out platforms like readsy.com. That's a great one. You could go and just do a general inquiry on any platform like here. Facebook has different groups that help match you up with different potential editors and everything. But again, do your research, have a budget in mind, talk to other authors, and I'm sorry I can't be more specific because my editor that I use right now is technically going through a retirement stage, so she's tapering down lower and lower. And I have streamlined my process, so right now my work doesn't nearly cost me as much as it used to, but she works by time versus by word. Oh, makes sense. Okay. Let's see. Okay, a good editor is an angel. A good proofreader are the tips of the wings. Oh, that's so pretty! I like that. So I'm going to say that one more time. A good editor is an angel. A good proofreader are the tips on the wings. Okay, I like that. I do like that. So yes, proofreaders are great. You can have, if you know things, they're like different stages of readers. You can have alpha readers, beta readers, editors, proofreaders. There are all different kind of ways you can approach it. Betas are nice because they're the group I think a lot of authors use before an editor, but you can also use them afterwards, kind of like a proofreader as well. And that can potentially save you money, because if you have a large enough, I would say not huge, but if you know, start developing a decent beta reader group, maybe you do 5 spectacular ones, maybe you do 10. You don't want to totally overwhelm yourself, but you want to have different eyes on it, and betas are there to help you with edits after you've gone through your work multiple times, so it's not first draft. Make sure you go through it a few times. Then you can send it to betas, and they'll help a lot dramatically, help you out. Depending on what you tell them you expect from them, they can help you kind of find plot holes in some of these big issues. They could find things that are inconsistencies, or they could be more on the grammatical side of things and help again with spelling errors, grammatical errors, etc. so on. So they can help you in many ways. Then you send it to your editor, get it back, go through those edits, approve or not, and then you would want to do a polisher, proofreader, etc. so on to try to catch that ending stuff, because you can be surprised. A manuscript can have 1,002 eyes look at it, and still errors come out, and you just have to be aware. You're doing your best, but they will still probably have an error. You try not to, but it's truth. And I'm not, again, I don't mean to totally push indie on people, but being an indie author, you are able to easily correct that. If someone points out something else, it's rather easy to then go back and correct your manuscript, re-upload it, especially on the Amazon side. I have not worked with other platforms like Ingram Spark, which is a little wide, but I've heard one author say they may charge you some fee each time you re-upload, so be aware. But on the Amazon side of things, knock on wood, they don't at this moment of time, which is nice because I have multiple times corrected stuff or done updates. Especially for ebooks, I like doing live links, and I'll try to link to the next book. So as soon as I have the next book on pre-order, I try to link them, and so I'm always kind of updating little things in like the back matter or etc. so on, and try to keep it fresh and up to date that way. But if you find an error, it's relatively easy to correct it. Okay, let's see. Yes, well spoken. I do think so. Okay, I'm thinking of going indie, so listening to you explain everything, it helps a lot to boost confidence. Yes, thank you. I'm so glad to hear that. Yes, indie authors, I love them. I love being one. I love meeting them. It's a fun journey. There's a lot to learn, so try not to be overwhelmed by all the information that can be thrown your way, but it is still good to learn all that information too. Definitely focus on the immediate steps. Make sure you write your book, because without the book, you don't have to worry about anything else. Writing the book is of utmost importance, but there are definitely things that you could be doing right away that would benefit you immediately. So catering to the book talk community here, let's say, and saying that you are a writer or a wannabe author or however, and start, you know, intermingling with that community. There are a lot of soon-to-be authors or recent authors that did it that way, and they built great followings and had great support systems. So when they released their first book, they had a bunch of buyers already waiting, which is fantastic. I wish I, you know, was in the age and stage of being a upcoming writer in the world of book talk. Wasn't the case for me, so trying to carve out my niche right now, doing the best I can. Okay, I read Mr. Mercedes by I read Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King. It said in the last chapter, link this back to chapter 2. Yep, okay. See? Okay, that's hysterical. Didn't know that. That is pretty funny. Okay. That again goes back to the thing as being indie, you can have someone catch that and you can correct that. If you go through a publishing house, it's probably a little harder to get those things corrected. Previous error, it would, yeah, unless it's a grievous error. I don't know how it would be to fix something. I don't know. That would be totally new to me because I am not. I have not had the pleasure of working with a publishing house, but yeah, no, that's kind of funny. Yes, errors can occur, and it is nice to be able to take the control and correct them almost immediately. It is embarrassing though. When they slip by. Okay. Let's see. Going down my list. Okay, what is the most important bit of information you would want to tell a person interested in publishing a book? Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I feel like I'm beating this one pretty well. Okay, let's see. Best advice. Well, start now. If you are interested in writing a book, start building what you call a platform right now, which means start trying to reach out as a upcoming writer, upcoming author, and create a presence on different platforms. The rule of thumb, I think, for most people right now is pick 1 to 2 platforms to focus on. I highly recommend Book Talk because it seems to be the way of the future, the way things trend. So I would definitely try to have a presence here on that platform if you use TikTok that way. And then, you know, you can choose one, you know, to stick with Book Talk, try to choose another to kind of kickstart and start building a presence and be very engaging, be it the Twitter, the Instagram, the Facebook, etc., so on. There are a lot of platforms out there. Even Pinterest. I like using Pinterest. But that's a little different. And I started developing a newsletter. So even if you have yet to publish, you can start trying to collect subscribers for a newsletter, and that's great because then you have a captive audience to talk about when your book's released. But in the meantime, you could, you know, post a little bit about your writing journey so far. You know, you can talk to other authors and like feature other indie authors or main authors' books on the newsletter, get excitement. That way, create, if you are writing, one great trick is to create a short story or novella and give it away for free for people who subscribe to your newsletter, because one, that allows them to kind of have a little taste of what they might expect coming down the line in a bigger work, and also again encourages people to start following you and getting that audience, because once you publish, then you have readers ready. That's the theory, at least. So that's what I would advise. Okay, coming towards the end of the hour. If anybody has questions for me, throw them out there. In the meantime, I'll try to see if I can get through a couple more of these before the end of this session. Okay. Okay, where am I? Okay, what is the one thing you wish you knew at the beginning of your writing journey? Wow, there's pretty much the same thing. Okay. Outside of building a platform and all these fun things that we talked about today, I would say a great thing to do would be learning advertising. If now not all authors utilize ads, book ads, for their work, and some people do fantastically without ever needing to, which more power to them. I have started really taking time and energy and trying to figure out the whole advertising books, and the biggest ones right now are Amazon and Facebook, actually, surprisingly. I guess not really that surprising, but Facebook ads, at least for me, I finally started to figure it out after a long time. And they are starting to work for me. They're starting to bring in, you know, they're covering themselves expense-wise because ads cost money to put out there, but you hope the goal is that they make more than you spend. And so I finally started figuring out that trick, which is fabulous. And so that's a good thing, I would say. If you are interested in being a person who runs ads, there are some great courses out there. I use self-publishing formula, Mark Dawson's Ads for Authors course. It is expensive, so it may not be something that an upcoming author wants to jump into right away, but it, for me, was pretty invaluable to go into that for advertising purposes and learning through that. Okay, let's see. I seen term series fear. Could you explain it more of what it is? Ooh, series fear. I actually don't know if I know this term. That's a new one on me. Okay, series fear. Honestly, I do not know that term, so I wouldn't know how to explain it. I could guess it may be something that might be something where you either doubt yourself when you're writing the series or are a little hesitant of writing a long series. And I mean, as a series writer myself, that could be many things. It could be maybe you don't know where you're headed and it's overwhelming. Maybe you're uncertain if the first book is going to find readers, and then you don't want to dedicate your time and energy to put out other works in a series that wouldn't do well. I can see, if it's relating to an author, that there are some things that could be intimidating about writing a series, but for me, I haven't found that the case. I love writing series. I want to challenge myself to write a standalone in the near future. I have the storyline kind of working in the background. It'll be very different for me because I also want to challenge myself to write a series where I have multiple perspectives viewed in the book versus what I have right now, which all focus on a singular main character's point of view. Anywho, but seriously, I wish I could explain it, but I actually don't know. So I now need to Google this term so I can answer it in the future. Good question. Wish I knew the answer though. Okay, let's see. What is my favorite book and why? Ooh, a reader question. Okay. I'm an odd person, and I will admit that in many ways. But my genre that I enjoy the most, I guess it's not really a genre, category that I enjoy the most, I like ancient epic poems, prose. So I like the source material for most mythology. With that said, like, I'm referring to stuff like the Odyssey and Ramayana and all these Icelandic sagas that inspire. So picking one would be a little hard. I know I like that theme. I have gone back and read the Odyssey multiple times. Oh, but that'll be hard. Picking one. Actually, here. I'm gonna throw everybody to a loop after I just dragged you down that rabbit hole. Okay, so my favorite non-fantasy related book, yes, I do read on occasion non-fantasy related things, is Out of Africa. It is, for me, a very classic. I just like the main character. I like her journey. And yes, if you've seen the movie, it is a little heart-wrenching. Though the book is less focused on the romance, but I find her fascinating. And the fact that that was loosely based on the author's actual life is even more fascinating for me. And being a person who would, in my dream life, enjoy living somewhere totally off the wall, like Africa, like the Amazon, maybe not the Amazon, but, you know, somewhere off the wall, the Galapagos, oh my god, okay, New Zealand, I could go on, but I think Out of Africa would be my choice. Thank you. I mean, I was trying to answer your question. It's really, I don't know the answers, the term series here, so sorry. Okay, and I will say, let's see. Oh my goodness, so many questions. Okay. Which book villain would be the hardest to defeat? Oh my. Okay. That is tough. Oh, there's so many. Okay, so I love villains. I don't know. Let me think. Which book villain? I'm assuming this question is pertaining to not my personal villains. So, oh, what's his name? It's been so long. Okay, if anybody has read the book Inkheart, now this is throwing the loop. That's an interesting villain. And I cannot remember his name, so I know this is a very bad way to answer this question. But I just remember he was very terrifying of his mercilessness and how he both psychologically and physically abused people and made his point and tried to win. But I would say him, though again, I can't remember his name. If anybody has read Inkheart or any of the books in that series, I'm pretty sure then you know who I'm talking about. Oh, I am so bad with names. Okay. I'm weird. I've only read 19 books ever, and written too. Where the Crawdads Sing is my fave. Ooh, okay, I've heard great things about that book. It has been talked about so much since it was released, yet I have yet to read it. I should be put onto my TBR, so maybe I should, after this, throw that on my wish list so I can remember that it's a book that I need to read, because that's how I'm using that right now, as my TBR list, essentially, is my wish list. Okay, how much planning do you do before writing, or are you a pantser? Okay, someone who told me this. Oh, who was saying, there's someone else, I cannot claim this term, said plantser before. Like, a planner pantser. That's so weird. Okay, but I'm kind of in between. And what I mean by that is when I come up with a new story, it's weird because I almost instantaneously know the main characters immediately. I know the main plot, where we're trying to end, the main themes. That all's kind of like developed in like that supernova burst. Now, with that said, it's the details to get to those bigger points that I don't know, and some of that I let the story tell itself. And if you write a lot, that you might understand what I mean by that, because I actually had a character write itself into being, and he survived, which, being a dark fantasy series, that was pretty impressive for me. But all 4 books, pretty impressive. Anywho, for the most part, I do a combination. I make sure I kind of know the end game. If it's a series, I have in my head pretty much how many books they're going to be. I know the main themes, know the main characters, and then go from there. And that seems to work for me. Everybody's different. There are a lot of people, especially I think more the mystery writers out there, where you may not necessarily need to know where the series ends, as long as each individual mystery is encapsulated in the book, and you can continue on that way. As an epic fantasy writer, I kind of like to know where it's going to end. But it's also heartbreaking when I get close to the ending, because then I'm like, oh no. It's about time to say goodbye to my characters. Oh my. Okay, so how do you know if you should write in third person? I can't even speak today. Omnipotent. Okay, third person. Okay. It's all your perspective is one of those things. It's all how you want to express the story, because you know, if you're doing first person, you're in that character's head. You're in that character's head. And especially if you're first person one character that you're writing about, you have challenges of being limited. You only know what the character knows. When you're doing something that's third person, that's kind of a little bit more what I like to do, is a third person point of view. In other words, I can express being in people's heads, but I'm not necessarily it's not the I, it's not the me. It's I'm kind of still having that narrator describe aspects. And the omnipotent aspect is that you're expressing things that maybe your characters don't necessarily know. And so each way you write, it just depends how you want the story told. Do you want the reader to know something that the character does not? So you have that whole, don't do this, don't go in there, there's the villain, blah, blah, blah kind of scenario. Or do you want them to only know what your character knows? And so there are lots of different ways to approach it. You know, you can write with a single point of view, or there are those books that each chapter, or maybe even subsections of chapters, flips a different person's point of view. Six of Crows was one of those. They have, I forgot, it was like 5 characters that they bounce between. And Wheel of Time does that too, where it's multiple characters each chapter. And so as a reader, you're learning a lot of what's going on, even though the characters only know snippets of what's going on, and it's kind of fun. So depending on how you want to express your book, you can choose how the style you want to go for, if that makes sense. I do the same. My phrase is, I plot so I can pant. Yes, yes. Do you ever base your characters on real people? Okay. No. Yes. Maybe. No. Okay. For the most part, I try to make the characters as unique and individual as possible. You know, I feel that they kind of tell themselves, they create themselves, and when I try to constrain my characters and force them to be a way that hinders the story, makes them end up feeling less vibrant, less real. So for the Guardian Speaker novella series, it's been a lot of fun because I've really just let the characters become themselves, and seeing how individualistic they can be. Is that a word? Okay. Where is my editor right now? Okay. But yeah, when it comes to writing real people, the only one, like I mentioned earlier, that I the only couple that I've kind of based off people are the 2 characters in my Jug Chronicle series, and because that series being based off all these characters from my childhood play, one of them was my alter ego, Katie of Earth, and one of them is my sister's how I personified or adjusted her ego, her character, her persona, and changed her name in that, but loosely based on the character she developed in our games. So those are the only ones I could say potentially are based off people. Everything else is, I try to keep unique. I do incorporate real moments or aspects of, you know, my own personal experience or someone else's personal experience that I've talked about and incorporated them in there. For instance, and I have a character in the Incarn Saga that had an issue where started having a shoulder dislocate, and I had a friend at the time who had that same problem, so I did kind of interview him and be like, how does that feel? How does this happen? How easy is it to reset? And kind of incorporate some reality into my fantasy that way, but the character itself not based on that person. Okay. I have an interview with you on July. Yay! Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. Yes, and so for interviews in the future, it'll be 2 authors usually, and we kind of do this. We just talk fantasy and writing, or maybe not fantasy, sci-fi, or you know, fiction, non-fiction, etc., so on. But it's a lot of fun. Okay. I've seen using race in novels been pushed back by readers. What if my race are lichens, vampires, druids, dwarf, and etc.? Honestly, for fantasy, I don't mind that. My Nordic mythology one, the Guardian Speaker, I do use the word race, but for instance, in Norse mythology, there are 3 kind of elves. Tolkien used 2 of them and create the light elves and the orcs. I'm going back a little more to the source material, so I do have the 3 races of elf. So I do use that word, and that way, but it's a differentiation within a fictional race. And fictional being. So I don't think that should be an issue, at least in my personal opinion. But if you ever are concerned with anything that might be a hot topic issue, one thing you can look into is getting someone to be, or some ones to be, sensitivity readers. And what those are people who, if you're, especially if you're talking about race as in color of your skin, or, you know, orientation like that, you would want to reach out to whatever population you're trying to convey and get a couple people of that population to read your work and say, hey, this is offensive. What do you feel? Do I need to tweak anything? Did I relate that? And I had to do that for my Garden Speaker series. It is based on Viking, Norse mythology and the people of the Viking era. With that said, there is slavery as a topic. There is a main character who was brought in as a slave who is not the same color of skin. So I had to poll a couple people and say, hey, can you read this for me? I am concerned. I don't want to be offensive. I want to, you know, express what I'm trying to express, but, you know, I never want to offend someone in that way. And it ended up being fine for me. I got the okay for that because it ended up approaching it in a way that was, I guess, good. That's not even, I don't even know if you can say good about that topic, but yeah, sensitivity readers may help if you are concerned. Just say, hey, you know, when you're getting to the point of ARC readers, which are people who will read your book after it's been edited, after it's been finalized, essentially right before you publish, you can send them to people who are read the advanced copy, and they're usually there to then write a review upon publication. But around that time, you can also reach out to sensitivity readers at that point, or if you're super concerned and you don't want to waste your time on writing a book that you might have to rewrite in a major way, give someone a rough draft and say, hey, can you read my rough draft? I will note that whenever, I hate to say it, but whenever you are about to share your work, get your copyright certificate, apply for that right away. You have, I forgot what percentage of edits that you can kind of fluctuate in, which will still be under that particular copyright certification. But that's just that beautiful proof that if anybody does then try to take your ideas and claim them as their own and slip in there, you have that proof. So it's just one of those better safe than sorry things. I like to view the world as all happy and good. It's not always the case. So that's just a good thing to do, is apply for your copyright certification. You can do some edits. If you do a major rewrite, then you might have to apply for a second one, because if you change, I don't know what the percentage is, you know, 25%, I don't know, of your book, then it'll be deemed as a new work and you'll probably have to submit again. But yeah, sensitivity readers, I would definitely suggest for that. Okay. But I did write, real life problematic between race, but as a high fantasy. Yeah, I personally think that is fine. I talk about race a lot in that way heavily, and I definitely, when people ask me about my books, will mention that. My first book series, Incarnate Saga, we talk about race, we talk about sexual inequality, religious persecution, we talk about some heavy stuff in a high fantasy. My main character is a shapeshifter and female in a patriarchal human-run nation. Shapeshifters, the Therimorphs, are polytheistic by nature, or historically I should say, and the humans brought in monotheism when they came to the country, and so there's a clash of religion. So I do talk about that pretty heavily in that series, and still touch on those topics in different ways in my other series as well. I do think they're important to talk about. I don't think people should shy away about, you know, differentiation and issues that honestly make a fantasy relatable, because fantasy fiction, you can say some of the greatest truths through fiction. You can change someone's mind about a situation, a belief system, etc., so on, just through a work of art, as I view books as works of art. But there are great ways to open a dialogue, open a commentary, question things, allow readers to start thinking about things in new ways, pointing out flaws, etc., so on. So I don't think you need to shy away and, you know, incorporating real life issues of concept of race in fantasy. I mean, I do it. Will someone potentially be offended? There is that risk. But sensitivity readers are great, and, you know, I wouldn't necessarily shy away of talking about some of the harder topics through fiction. That's just my personal point of view. Are you attending book cons? Okay. If so, which one would you recommend? Okay, so cons, I haven't attended a book con. I know there are a lot of conferences out there that are good. One that's pretty popular is 20 books to 50K is the group. You can find that group on Facebook. They have a conference annually in Vegas. It's one that I've been debating to attend for a while, but haven't. I hear a lot of good things about them. For the most part, I like what they say. I disagree sometimes on certain authors in the group who kind of underplay the editing process, but for the most part, they do have great resources of all different facets for upcoming writers that are there. I mean, in their group, they have so many six-figure up authors in that group. I mean, and a lot of those authors started out joining the group and learning the process, and now they make bukus of money. That's not always the case, but that group, that one's good. I can't think of any names. I'm bad with names off the cuff. There are a lot out there. Again, research. In Georgia, there is the Duluth Book Festival. It's one that I would consider attending at some point. I would like, I think personally, especially if I'm trying to do a booth versus being an attendee, to have more work published. So that is my goal before I actually have a booth myself. But I know that one's a big one for, it's one of the biggest ones in the US is for a book festival, but that's a little more geared to readers coming in, meeting authors and selling versus an author attending, which 20 books to 50K is a great one. Okay, I've been told first you write for yourself, then your readers. I did go with that belief, but now I'm questioning it since I, let's see, what you want to read? Okay, sorry. Okay, questioning it, honestly, those are two different, okay, for anybody, there are two different ways you can approach starting off writing any kind of work. One is to write to an audience. This is a marketing skill. This is great, and it almost guarantees that you will have readers right away because you already know who you're going to market to. You don't have to take this approach. A lot of authors also, on the other side of things, and I am on the other side of things, write what you want to write. And there is also a theory, I forgot what the number is, but saying, you know, think about how many people in the world, there are X many that have the same point of view exactly as you, and then of those, there are X many who have similar views. And so working outwards, you will still find readers, but you have to do a little more work to research that way. And that's tough because I'm trying to be a little more conscious, aware of the readership that I would be catering to when I'm creating a work, but I'm not limiting myself also. I don't want to niche myself down too much. My works kind of do vary within the high fantasy, epic fantasy universe. And I have run, I'll admit, both pros and cons. I have run into issues when I was starting to do the marketing of my first series, because I was trying to figure out how to find similar books, what you will hear the word comp, because that helps you not only market, but then, you know, cater ads and find people who have similar interests. Because that's a new adult, which is new adult, still a emerging age bracket, war shifter fantasy, and most people think shifter and think shifter romance. And that is one of my biggest things I have issues with, is even though I run ads and I'm trying to avoid the romance people, I can definitely tell when I get a bunch of people getting the first book and not reading through because they probably thought it was a shifter romance, and it's not. It is definitely not. There is romance in it, but it is not a romance. And so when you're trying to decide which way, either way is fine. It's one is a little more work, but it also gives you the freedom of being true to yourself and your work a little bit more, if that makes sense. But that's also, again, my point of view, because I am the person who writes. I write what I think. Well, I write what I would read, and go from there. Now, I do cater to different age brackets, and so that makes, you know, me pitching my work a little different, because I have young adult, new adult, and so, you know, I'm not making marketing my own work very easy, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think that's a bad thing if you're trying to write for yourself. Just be aware is when you're writing, try to pick out themes, genres, and keep that in mind, so when you are at the point of marketing your own work, you kind of have a basis of at least who you're aiming for right away. And again, marketing yourself and creating a platform through followers on stuff like Book Talk, you know, already talking about your genre, your niche, or whatever, you'll already start having people come to you. And I cater different subcategories. I have dark fantasy, I have portal fantasy, I have Viking fantasy, so I have different ways of catering these micro niches, and I'm finding people who are really into those subcategories on this kind of platform, Book Talk. Okay, let's see, and where am I? Sorry, I lost where we were. Hello, okay. Okay, so it looks like that is it right now, and I will be back. I'm usually on one of these once a week. Typically, I will have a co-host with me. Sometimes I will... Thank you! Hey, Wendy, thank you. Typically, we'll have a co-host and to come and chat. If you are interested and you are in the author-writer side of things, feel free, again, make sure you follow me and then message me, because I can get you in my schedule of interviewing people and chit-chatting. It's not really an interview, it's more like a talk. We talk fantasy and answer viewers' questions. But yeah, I will be back next week, and nice to meet you guys. And see, write everything, mainly fiction. I love that. See, I love that. I wouldn't hinder yourself. Just know, quick note, then I'm going to do my wrap-up. If you do write broadly different audiences, you might want to be a person who considers taking a pen name. I have not for my, because I'm qualifying all my writing right now as epic/high fantasy. Should I have broken it up in different age brackets with different pen names? Maybe, but I just keep my name for my epic fantasy aspect. If I ever broached away and decided to do a true romantic fantasy, or even something off the wall, in a totally different genre, maybe some sci-fi, that's not exactly a totally different genre, but it's not. I would probably consider doing a pen name at that point. Okay, you're welcome for the advice. Nice to meet you. Okay, so that's it for the day, and I will see you again next week.